of the violins of autumn wound my heart with a monotonous
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Today at 1, we're live in Ukraine as Russia invades in a major military assault by land, sea, and air.
It's now more than a month since the US Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan. China's ambassador to Australia also issued a blunt warning a few days ago that those who push for Taiwanese independence will be punished.
We're waiting for a peaceful reunification, but we cannot rule out other options.
You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore.
Welcome to Dictators v Democrats, Why We Fight, the show where we speak with those on the front lines of defending democracy. New episodes drop every Friday. Before we start, I do have one thing to ask you, my wonderful listeners. If you value this work, then please find one person, a colleague, a family member, a friend, who you think might be interested in the stories that we're telling here, and share it with them, and explain why you find it valuable. This way, we can help this platform grow and get these vital stories out to more people. Thank you very much. Also, check out my work on the Dictators v Democrats Substack and YouTube channels, where I cover every front of the global fight for democracy. Now, let's find out why they fight. Welcome to Why We Fight. I'm very privileged to be here talking with Mr. Nick Soutter, an American author, philosopher, and journalist who is very much active in the pro-democracy world. Mr. Soutter, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Oh, a genuine pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So, in case any of my audience are not aware more specifically of what you do, can we go into that a little bit first?
Sure. I graduated with BAs in philosophy and psychology. I continued the philosophy sort of as an autodidact past that. Wrote a speculative fiction novel about sort of what would happen if corporations took over the whole world. And then I started a podcast. It's called In Time. I felt very dissatisfied with the state of news in the world today. I thought we were losing objectivity, we were losing nuance, and that it was deliberate. It's easier to sell marketing time to people if you pull those things out. So the goal of In Time was to, as the best of our ability, give accurate reporting and put that reporting in context, and to, at the same time, criticize the reporting of mainstream media, CBS, ABC, NBC, so on and so forth. So that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years.
And where could people find In Time Media?
Our website is intimeshow.com, but you can also find us on YouTube, YouTube.com/intimeshow. And you've seen we did the interview with General Ben Hodges. We've interviewed a wide variety of people on a wide variety of topics. Philosophy is definitely one of them. We have a long talk on generations theory with a professor from Rutgers University, and we try to we try to look at the big picture and then go in, I think is the best way to describe it.
So this project, Dictators v Democrats, very much focused on the risks to democracy and the perception that I think many of us have, and if I may, I would say I believe you share, that democracy is under threat and is under concerted attack. How are we doing, us Democrats, do you think, at the moment? Small d
Poorly.
Democrats.
I think it depends on how. So I'm also a teacher. I taught high school for a while, and in fact, I consider myself an educator. The book it's a novel, but the goal was to educate. The show's goal is to educate. So again, context to me is everything. How are we doing? Well, compared to the last 50 years, extraordinarily poorly. Compared to the last 2,000 years, not as badly as you may think. There is always a give and take. Martin Luther King Jr. said one of my favorite expressions ever, but it's one that you have to really digest, which is the arc of history is long, but it bends towards progress. And it's been my experience that it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And every generation is either going to be that generation that's just seeing the full. And if you take a look at where the US in particular has been since the 70s, it's been progress, 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 progress. And we don't think of it as because we still see that it's this paradoxical. We tend to see what's missing, not what we have. We are always yearning for more than we have, no matter how much better we have it than the previous generation. And that's okay, because that's how progress is made. But if you don't temper that, you can start to not appreciate what you have, and then it gets taken away a lot easier. And so what we're seeing civil rights, we're seeing all of these things that we in the US at least had assumed would be around forever are getting rolled back to at least the 70s. And so this generation is experiencing that step back. And I think it feels horrific. I think on some levels it's going to be horrific. On some levels, I'm not anticipating the U.S. getting overthrown, but compared to the luxury we've had recently, I think it's not going to be very pleasant. But I think we then learn our lesson and move forward. Now, the only real question is, how far back do we have to go before that happens? You can ask people like Marie Antoinette that question. I mean, there's a point at which, it's just the question is how far? And that's the question we're asking ourselves. And right now, it's looking worse than we'd like it to look.
What are the major warning signs that you are seeing? I can list a few in my head, but...
The biggest is the assaults on free speech. The biggest is the pay for play. Donald Trump demanding any amount of money or extorting any amount of money in any way, even the appearance of it. I mean, no president would have sued a company while in office up until now. The fact now, the payment from Paramount was a bribe. It was a bribe. I know it was a bribe. Could I prove it beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law? That's a little tough to do, but it doesn't even matter, because it's the appearance that's the problem. And it's that way for a reason, for a very good reason. So the fact that he is sending the message quite successfully that you're going to have to pay him something, some form of tribute, if you're going to do business. That's the biggest. That's the biggest line being crossed, and we saw it crossed in his first administration in tiny ways, usually just with individuals. Now we see it with corporations, where he's like, I don't know if these corporations should really have their broadcasting license. That's it. That right there is it. It's the pay to play model, and paying him, not his administration, not the U.S. government. That money isn't going to help fund roads. It's not, which would be bad enough, by the way. I mean, you could pull a Julius Caesar and end up, you're actually maybe doing good things with the money that you've stolen or taken from the people. But this isn't even that. This is just it's going into Trump's coffers.
Yeah, I've heard the comparison between the Roman populares and optimates before, and comparing Trump to the populares. Now I was thinking, you are really missing something here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you spoke about pay to play, and in your book, The Water Thief, corporations have essentially replaced government. And this is something I've been concerned about for a very long time. The way I see it, you will have coercive force applied in your life at some point. And the great thing about a democratic government is that at one point you can tell it to bugger off. Very difficult to do with a corporation. And today it seems that huge companies are growing to wield more power than states. So how much of this erosion is economic and has figures like Peter Thiel, like these neo-feudal wannabe techno-aristocrats behind it?
Got a copy. So this is the book. And in it, one of the things that I did, there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs in there. One of the worst passages, a man has invested in a community. And in this book, everything's privatized. The air you breathe is privatized. There are no laws. If you want to, you can take a gun, go up, pull the trigger, and kill someone. And there's no problem with that, so long as you're capable of compensating the company that owned that person, whatever his future value would have been. So futures are for sale, just in the same way that they are, by the way, now. I mean, we sell futures all the time on the stock market. So it's everybody has a future. If you want to smoke cigarettes, you can do that, but you actually have to compensate your company for your own loss of health and productivity because they own you. You're privately owned. It's a private citizen. So in this exchange, he's talking about how one person hasn't paid their electric bill, so he's putting their picture up everywhere in the community so everyone can see who it is, and then he's cutting off everybody's power until that one power bill gets paid. And I get some complaints. People sit there and say, well, that seems a little harsh. I don't know if I buy that a company would be that harsh. That quote, the entire thing where he says, I don't care if a grandma's on life support, it's plagiarized. That entire quote was a direct from the FBI wiretaps of the Enron company, and it was one of the Enron employees talking to the other about cutting off power in California. In as many places as possible. And I talked to my lawyer. I said, I'm lifting this and I'm not citing it. He's like, you don't need to cite it. The guy's not going to sue you. He was wiretapped by the FBI saying this. But I quote things said by Nestle about how the world would be better if there were no governments. The CEO of Nestle, and he agreed that climate change was man-made. So absolutely. But the solution is to privatize water. The solution is everybody has to pay for water. That way they're incentivized to protect it. And that's where the title The Water Thief comes in, is a woman's actually stealing rainwater. And it belongs to a company. And so now that company is incentivized to find her because you can't steal water out of the air. Things like that, private in this company. So I think Elon Musk, Thiel especially, and a number of people genuinely believe that if you privatized everything, and I mean absolutely everything, you would. And they're already either they're all neoliberals in terms of their economic view, and objectivism is a neoliberal. It's the idea that the best way to measure people and it's the entire Randian philosophy, objectivism there, Austrian economics. So I think Thiel is as far to the neoliberal as you can get. He would rather there be no governments at all, and it's just corporations. And it's actually a Hobbesian state of nature. Each corporation has to take care of its own physical defense, its own. And if it can't, it gets eaten alive. That's the way it should be. And I think that's how Thiel sees it. I think that's unfettered capitalism.
And that is, I like to say it's feudal because it paints images in people's minds, but it's actually worse. Because in feudal Europe, there was still a supranational entity, the church, that occasionally would intervene. And, there were norms by which you were ruled. You were still a serf, but the church mandated that you had a set amount of holidays, and I find myself defending the church, which is a very strange thing for me to do. But since writing the book, how worried are you now fast forward to 2025?
More and more, because it seems like people are getting the idea. And part of me actually feels guilty for having written the book. So I was like, did I contribute to anybody getting this idea? And I don't think I did. I think we were headed in that direction, but I did an updated, like a second edition that included all the changes that we had seen in society. And one of them was, people said, we're never privatizing people's futures. That's never going to happen. And literally 2 years after I wrote the book, a sports player privatized his futures. He was the first human being that we're aware of to do that, where he basically said, help me get through college, and I'm in the minors, I get my, and then go into the majors, and then you'll make a percentage of whatever I make. But that gives the corporation now an incentive and a say over this person's even personal life. And I forget what it's called, but there's 2 companies now that will put you through college, and you basically owe them a percentage of your future earnings for the rest of your life. So we're selling people's futures. We're headed in that direction. I did write this as speculative fiction. I wrote this as a rebuttal to why Atlas. I think Ayn Rand got a lot more right than people give her credit for. I think she got a lot more right than people give her credit for. Her system still isn't going to work. It's just not going to work. And I wanted to explain, granting everything that she wanted, why it still wouldn't work. And I think people don't see that. You have the problem of, and I had said this before, people who are born on third base and think they hit a triple. People who, what I've noticed is people like Warren Buffett, who've made their own money, have a tendency to want to see social programs, have a tendency to want to help other people, have a tendency to want to lift up everybody. On the rising tide lifts all boats. And it's funny that the objectivists will use that exact same analogy, but in their view, it's the trickle down economics. Whatever money I drop is yours. And the people who were given Mitt Romney used to say, well, my parents never gave me anything. That's half true. He didn't inherit money from his parents. They don't believe in inheritance. Okay, so he's at least balancing the scales somewhat. But he got all his father's contacts in business. He got an education at a private school paid for by his family. So it's not that he got nothing. And it's people like that who sit there and say, oh, I think it's perfectly fair that I pay 14.9, so 15% income tax, while my secretary pays 23% income tax. And his secretary earns 1/100th of what but because everything he's getting is in capital gains. So what I've seen is the people who earned their money through hard work tend to believe in a system that helps everybody. People who earned their money either dishonestly or had a huge leg up, and I would include Elon Musk on dishonestly, because he didn't at PayPal, he hasn't created anything he's been given credit for. So he sees himself as a god because he doesn't even have to create it, and he gets, it's like, and Elon Musk made, 6 corporations in 6 days, and on the 7th he rested. And I think he believes that. And so the people who think that way, having not earned it, think, well, whoever has the most should be in charge, and that's it, and we should be able to bully anyone. That's how you know who's got the most. Trump is like, how would you know who's the best unless you just let everybody duke it out, and whoever comes out on top, and by the way, that's me, baby. And that's his attitude, and that's always the attitude of people who didn't earn it. And I find that an interesting distinction.
And I can see why the figures like Trump, Musk, etc., would be drawn to, this late stage capitalist hyper neoliberal economic system. What I wonder is why the average bloke, woman, etc., earning 40K a year is drawn to them and their systems as well. And I'm wondering if it's got anything to do with the, I forget who said it, but during the Great Depression, the tour of the Dust Belt, I forget which journalist it was, but he said, "Oh, there are no poor people here, only temporarily embarrassed millionaires."
Yeah, I forget who said that too, but what is it? Bill Maher likes to repeat that line a lot, and I wish he'd say who said it because it was he didn't come, but yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. I think the other huge part of it, and this gets into how dictators rise in the first place. One of the interesting things about Adolf Hitler is the average German thought he was kind of dumb. They saw him a bit more the way most Westerners saw George W. Bush, kind of this, and they liked that about him because they're like, this guy can't really pull one over on me. I like the fact that he's in charge because he's not going to really break everything. It's just going to be in neutral and it's going to go forward. Things are kind of okay the way they are. Let's just do that. So I think when they look at some of these people, I mean, there's clearly something wrong with Musk. there's a lot wrong with him.
Yeah.
Trump is a bit of a buffoon. Even the ones who like him, I think that's almost part of why they like him, because they say, well, if this is the guy I ultimately have to compete against, I look pretty good in comparison. And eventually I am that embarrassed millionaire because the leader of this movement is kind of a buffoon. So me and a couple of other guys who are all at least as smart as average, if not smarter, we'll have no trouble in a system like this because they see how well he's done. Not really accepting the fact that the game was rigged to get them there, and it continues to be rigged. I think there's also the by proxy. Well, I support Trump. I assume it's perfectly fine to swear here.
Oh yeah.
I'll send you my Trump rant from 2016 when he won but basically for a lot of MAGAs, he's a surrogate cock. He's this, I support Trump, and that actually works on multiple, a peacock spreads its in this whole huge display. That's him. And so if you say that's the dear leader, that's the guy, he and I are simpatico, even though he's never met me. I support him. When we're in the audience, he says, I love you guys. You guys are what make America great again. And he's right. I'm what make America great again, not you. And I know because this huge peacock is the one telling everyone. So I think he lets people, you know what it is? Somebody had put it this way that I really like. He gives people social capital. So, and especially if you are inclined to blame minorities, Black people, Hispanics, whatever, and if you're inclined to use language that is not permissible nowadays in your description of these people, he all of a sudden makes it okay. So now all of a sudden, you see, I was right all the time for being able to use the N-word, because it's being made much more acceptable now because I was right when I said that whites are superior. Or if I didn't say that, at least sort of thinking that I'm. So again, he elevates all those who believe and think along with him. And I think that's what it is. It's the increase, or the perceived increase, in social capital you get, and people who have nothing else will happily take that instead of economic capital.
It's only a relative increase. And in terms of if you're comparing yourself to the people that he's kicking down, then if you're of that mindset, you could see yourself rising. But it becomes, I think Snyder coined, I don't know if he coined the term, but talks about pseudo-populism and how attractive and it's kind of a siren song that it is. And I'm reminded of the awful video that was shown from CSOT and during a Trump rally, he brought up a big screen with the images of detainees coming out of the plane in Venezuela to their enormous, not Venezuela, I apologize, to El Salvador, to their enormous facility. And Is there something in the psychology of the police that makes this attractive? Because when you think for a moment about what they're offering is authoritarianism.
Yeah, but authoritarianism for the people who disagree with you, not the people who agree with you. The people who agree with you, it's just the normal thing. Now, there's two problems. One, I know exactly where your head went, which is it creeps. Eventually, you will be on the out group. You have to, because the only way authoritarianism can continue to function is to always have an out group. So eventually, you will be on that out group if you live long enough. But most people, it takes an education or some understanding of history and how this works to know that they don't advertise. They don't put that in the billing like, Trump, make America great again until we decide we don't want you anymore. He doesn't say that. So they don't advertise that downside. I think it's attractive for a whole bunch of reasons. So the man who educates his slaves 200 years ago, educates his slaves, makes sure that they're healthy, gives them plenty of rest, and makes sure that they have plenty of nutritious food to eat, is a saint 200 years ago and is a monster today. Same guy doing the exact same thing. We have difficulty coming up with any kind of objective reality or morality. So we kind of judge ourselves relative to everybody else. And by that metric, it's no different if you elevate yourself 5 points than if you knock other people down 5 points. It's the same thing by that moral relativistic metric. But it's easier to knock other people down. Yeah. So I think, this happens especially as you get older. As you get older, takes a little longer to process things, a little harder to process things. You're in pain all the time as you start to really get older. And you're not as interested in seeing the nuance. And so it just gets easier to say, okay, these people are bad. And that necessarily, one of the things that I say, I have to believe it's awesome to be in the KKK. I have to believe it's awesome because you can't hate other people without, on at least one very primal level, elevating yourself. If they're all like rodents, then how awesome are you to be so superior to them? Now, it's a completely self-defeating ideology because if you hate them, then that means they have power over you somehow. They don't see that part. That's the extra step in the nuance that they're not getting into. But to get together with a whole bunch of your friends and talk about how much everybody else sucks, let's be honest, half the time we do that in whatever group we're in, whether it's cliques in high school, whether it's how badly this certain movie sucks or this director sucks or whatever, it is somewhat self-aggrandizing to tear other people down. And that's just one of those things that's built into us. Most of us have it in sort of moderation, and most of us think about it and have been torn down and say, ooh, I really don't want to do this too much to other people, and in a way that's, so we moderate that. Some of us don't. And some of us, and we have a term for it, sadist, enjoy doing it, to continue to enjoy it, and don't have the ability to put themselves in their shoes. So there's this huge spectrum in between. And I think this appeals to people who are leaning in towards the sadism. They may not be sadists at all, but they lack the empathy. When somebody said we should light this man on fire, black man at a Trump rally who they were kicking, and they said, light that man on fire, and then Trump's just like, oh, punch him in the face, I'll pay your bills, I'll pay your. This is a guy who is feeding that crowd deliberately. and it's phenomenally dangerous. And that's what January 6th. I mean, that's what the people sort of aren't understanding. But if you're in that group, it must have been empowering to be walking through the halls of Congress on January 6th. Imagine how much power those people felt they had. So it's, but do you know what one of the best indicators is of success for human beings? If you really want to tell, one of the easiest ways to tell, take a young kid, do the marshmallow test. I'll give you one marshmallow today or two marshmallows tomorrow. Pick. One marshmallow right now or two marshmallows tomorrow. The ones who say two marshmallows tomorrow, much more successful outcomes in the future than the one who says, I'll take the marshmallow today. The people who were storming the Capitol on January 6th all failed the marshmallow test. There isn't a single one of them that would have done the two. They don't think long term like that. It's, I want it now. And when they're going through the halls of power, and some of them afterwards were like, wow, that was a really bad idea. But they didn't, not at the time. And it's that impulsiveness. It's that just playing to our worst, the worst in us, but also a part that is self-aggrandizing. I think that's how it works. Apologies for the rant.
My answer to the marshmallow test would probably be, when's the last time I ate?
Yeah, I suppose that's true too. Well, hopefully you're not going around handing marshmallows out to kids who haven't eaten all day, because there's going to be a lot of very kids.
But I think perhaps a flaw in the test there, the perception of the value of the marshmallow. Anyway, I think we could really dive into that. But
yeah. Well, for a 6-year-old, but anyways, yeah.
How have this could be a long one, but how have we gotten to this point in an established, relatively successful democracy in the United States? We're seeing it mirrored in most of the successful democracies. We have Farage in the United Kingdom, we have Le Pen in France, we have AfD in Germany. Where is democracy failing? And is the concept of liberal democracy for the birds now?
Ooh. Oh, well, first of all, I'm going to plagiarize again. I'm going to steal your answer, because you and I had been on a show a while back. It's actually where we met, and you had been asked a similar question. You gave an answer that I really liked, and I think is absolutely the truth, which is it's complacency. It's this idea that, and again, all of us on some level were born on third base. I talked about the people who were born on third base and thought they hit a triple. I have been born as first of all, a white male in as a generation, the best time to have been born on this planet. The life expectancy is higher than it's ever been on average anywhere. Now it's very low in some places, but as a percentage of the population, higher, more freedom, more things to do with that freedom. I've got iPods, computers, the internet, all this stuff. 200 years ago, they couldn't do. I mean, I'm just swimming in things and the types of food I can eat. I can order food and have it brought to my house. Do you think 200 years ago that might have been handy? So I don't have a lot to complain about if I put things into that historical context. But human beings are adaptable. It's our greatest strength. It's our greatest weakness. And we adapt and we say, that Amazon, that order from Grubhub was cold. My God, I'm going to phone in a complaint. I'm going to put in a Yelp and, too much dog in my chow mein, and they're just whatever they have to do to complain and that's how things change. So that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think if you lose sight of how much you've got And I think that's really easy to do. And I think we've grown too complacent. I think we've handed too much power over to other people. And we do that because we trust the other people, at least to some degree, and it's easier than us having to manage it on our own. And any society, however it forms, is going to have to hand some power over to somebody, whether you're handing it over to a king, a bureaucrat, an autocrat, whoever it is. So the arguments that we're really having is over who to hand it over to, for how long, and why. And I think what's happened is too many people have decided 50% of the voting population in the US doesn't vote. That was the first sign something is very, very wrong. Because you may be upset about your Grubhub meal being cold, but if the US government turns into an authoritarian, a dictatorship, a fascist, anything other than ostensibly a republic that's operating quasi smoothly, Grubhub is going to be the least of your problems. So a little investment in paying attention to the politics, but it's getting harder, and it's getting harder because so many people are now paid to manage perception, to, Donald Trump didn't steal that money. He preemptively borrowed it, and the people who believe Trump may believe him because they're rich white people too, and they all are on the same team, or they may believe him because it's easier to believe him than to listen to the other person that says, oh, I got a list of facts here that's like 20 pages long that'll tell you exactly what happened. That list of facts may be completely true, but it's unfortunate that both sides have to care about marketing. And intellectuals that in my experience, intellectuals and people who most understand the system, who are, by the way, usually the first targeted, whether it's Jewish, whether it's lawyers, whoever, there's a reason Trump is going after lawyers first.
Yeah.
Intellectuals hate marketing. And they hate marketing because there is an inherent bias that is not necessarily true, but it's there anyway, which is if you have to market it, there's something untrue about it. That's not necessarily true, but I think that's an instinct that intellectuals get. It's like, we just want to see the facts. Just give us the facts. Don't gild the lily. We don't. But the reality is, when we're presenting it to somebody else, that's one of the things I like about education, but is the challenge about education. How do I present the facts, but entertain people while I'm doing it? I actually have to be an entertainer too. And the reason is because people aren't going to listen to just the facts. It doesn't usually work that way. There are a few who will, but not many. So if I care about people knowing the truth, I have to learn to entertain. I have to learn to market. I inherently distrust those things. So I think there's been a failure of the people most responsible for monitoring and keeping our democracy. I despised Hillary Clinton. Having said that, she was one of the most vetted candidates of all time in human history for any position. She was qualified, should have done a good job, would be afloat. Obama could market anything. I worked on the Obama campaign. I was just like, one of the reasons I was so excited to work on the Obama campaign was because it's like I don't have to sell this guy. He sells himself. He does all the work. He is so charming and knowledgeable. Bill Clinton wasn't that good a guy, was an okay president, but was very hard to dislike no matter what he did. And it's like, oh, he took advantage of an intern oh, well. It's just like, what? And marketing is vacuous. It is vapid. It contains no value in and of itself. So intellectuals are distrusting of it. But if we don't know how to market, if we don't know how to brand, if we don't know how to get and Democrats are terrible at this, and people say this all the time, Republicans are great at it. that's it. Half of all knowledge is the reality, the other half is the perception, and you have to find a way to bridge that and have a perception that's going to get people interested. And the other side is spectacular at that. If you've seen Charlie Kirk's things, if you've seen the Turning Point presentations, it's like, and we don't do that because we're like, no, our ideas are so good they should sell themselves. You know what? They should. They won't.
And not today. I mean, you spoke a lot about truth, but it's increasingly hard to determine what that is and to find it amongst all of the noise that you receive, especially if you unfortunately have to spend a lot of time online, which I do. How, and I'm a person who dedicates my life to this, and I find it difficult. How does Joe Schmo doing the 9 to 5 with 2.5 kids pass truth from falsehood, narrative from reality in today's world and avoid being manipulated?
If he's serious about it, shut up. Don't say anything. Don't opine either way. Keep your mouth shut. Take a look at what other people are saying. Take a look at what people you respect are saying. See if it makes sense. Take a look at what other people are saying. See if it makes sense. Then start to go through, and it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. Anything worth doing is going to take a while. This is going to take a while. You know, start to look through various newspapers, see what they say about each other, or online news organizations. You know, what does Fox say about 60 Minutes? What does 60 Minutes say about Fox? What do other people say about Fox? What are all these people saying? What does NPR say? NPR said one awesome, interesting thing about Fox. NPR did a study, and they came up with a list of, I think, 200 facts. Were weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq? You know, and distributed this, and by an order of 2 to 1, Fox News, consumers of Fox News, they knew half as many actual uncontested facts as anybody of any other news organization. Many of them did think there were weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq. Many of them did, which even Bush was like, oops, nope, there weren't any, sorry. So, but that Fox News doesn't report that. So just read those and just take 20 or 30 minutes a day, if that's what you got. Or take an hour on the weekend, save your weekdays for, and go through the news organizations. Don't form any opinions. Don't say anything, because the other thing is, once you start to say something, you're going to feel committed to it. So, if you go in and you say, I think Trump is an all right president. Okay, now you're already started. Don't. Just start to look at both sides, see which ones make sense. Realize this. Philosophers have been trying to find an objective truth since before Socrates, but Socrates is where we'll start. And there's an entire field of philosophy to it. It's called epistemology, and nobody has successfully done it yet. So recognize that you're going to make mistakes. So be open to change. Recognize that you're always going to have to put in at least a little work, verifying and double checking but find the ones that make sense to you and are talking to you in a language you understand and are giving things that make sense to you. Then start to commit to that. Then go talk to some people, see what your friends think of these ideas, see what other people, see if you get shot down real quick, and then explore it from there. And then it's an exploration, and it's one that never stops.
And we've just touched on it, but we've talked a lot earlier in this interview about, well, it's a diagnosis, right? Where have we gone wrong? What's the corrective?
Oh, that's a complicated question, and I wish I had a better answer. I've heard a lot of people, speaking up, I've heard a lot of people give an answer, and I haven't heard one yet, that in general, inoculation is the best. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We're now 6. So how do we fix it? The No Kings protests, I think, are the best shot that we've got. I think the lower courts are the best shot we've got, and winning in the midterms are the best shot we've got. Now, Trump knows that, which is why he's already trying to rig them, and it's getting bad. It's getting very bad. He's getting help from Republican governors. Texas has now been able to eliminate 5 Democratic seats in the House of Representatives and turn them Republican. So he knows if it flips, he's going to have a very big problem. They can start to impeach judges. They can impeach the Supreme Court judges if they want to. How far are they going to get? That depends on the Senate. But all of a sudden, things change. So I think voting, as everybody always says, and people don't take seriously enough in this country, if you want to keep things from getting any worse, and believe me, they can get much worse, and they can get worse quickly. We're going to sit there and say, how did it happen so quick? He isn't even done with his first year. He isn't even done with his first year. So voting, protesting doesn't seem like it does much, and I've seen a few criticisms of the No Kings protests that said that they're not really accomplishing much. 5 million people protesting is accomplishing quite a bit, if for no other reason. And first of all, they have to be nonviolent. The second they break into violence, they lose all authority they have, and they can get broken up, and you give Trump more power because he operates based on violence. But there is a flip side to that coin, which is when they get big enough, Trump is going to start to worry, okay, there are so many people in this. This is where they do start. If things don't change in the way they want, this is where society starts to break down. Only 15% of the people living in the colonies wanted a revolution against England. 15%. Those of us here think it was like 90%. That's the way it's sort of. Nobody says 90, but he's sort of like, everybody was like, yeah, no taxes, and we're throwing tea into the river. No, it was 15%. That's all it took. These No Kings rallies aren't at 15% of the voting population. That would be about 30 million, I think. Would be 15% of the voting population. But and if it's actually of people who voted, it would be 15 million. The last one was 5 million. If this one ends up being 10 million, Trump's going to say it's meaningless, but he's going to start to get scared because he's losing control of the population, and he doesn't have to lose control of a lot. Showing up, lending your voice, and lending your extreme displeasure. Again, it has to be nonviolent, and you have to realize too, he is going to send in people to cause violence because he wants there to be violence, because then he can shut it all down. So right now, I think voting, going to the No Kings protests, bringing a friend, and making sure that everybody's on the same page of this is not to do violence or to threaten violence or to do anything. This is to do a peaceful protest. And by the way, the things that dictators hate the most is being mocked. That woman playing the clarinet with the Ghostbusters theme, they beat the living daylights out of her. Why? It's not even that Ghostbusters was, really making fun of Trump, but it's because she was showing she's not afraid of him. That's what scares him the most. And that's what No Kings does. We have to show them we're not afraid, and I think that's the best way to do it. That, and the lawyers, you have to support lawyers who are standing up. You have to support institutions, especially academic institutions that are standing up, and you have to say, no, he's crossed the line. He crossed it a while ago, and he's committing murder. He is blowing up boats that have civilians. It's murder. It's murder. Period. End of discussion. And he's got the rest of the world so kowtowed. They're like, well, maybe it's no, sorry. Yeah.
And the inoculation. And this applies to all of the democracies. They're all going, at least the major ones are all going through these same spasms. And it seems to me, and I spoke to Professor Mark Galeotti, he's a Russia watcher, and one of the best. And he speaks a lot about the devolution of Russia. But I asked one of the questions at the end, which we'll come to, and he said, democracy as it's built at the moment does not appear to be built for the modern world. There is not a party that represents the flat-capped steelworkers anymore, because those sectors are almost gone. And the right or center-right party is less the party of ambition and, I hate to ambition and sort of self-improvement in an economic fashion, and more the party of those who have. So it seems that the structure of the representative democracies and capitalism in its form isn't working and has resulted in Trump, Farage, Le Pen, AfD. What's the cure to that? The inoculation.
Well, those sort of. I mean, I think the inoculation is what we talked about earlier, which is education. And listen, when Boris Johnson was talking about Brexit, it took 30 to 45 seconds to realize that, and I don't think he specifically said, I forget who it was who said, but he certainly got behind the idea, and they put it on the buses, how much money that they're going to get back for their health care, from Brexit, not pointing out that yeah, that's the money they get back, but they actually get more from the EU than that, so there would still be a net loss. But it took 30 seconds to figure that out. But we entrench, and if you told somebody, hey, look, I can show, I don't want to see facts and figures. I think the problem is things are a bit on a pendulum, and I think what happens is we get complacent. We sort of decide we're entitled to everything that we have. We were born in America, born in whatever, we stop thinking about countries that have less, people that have less. This causes riots, revolutions, the spread of disease. This causes all sorts of problems. And we sit there and say, oh, wow, that's a really bad idea. We start to swing and start to, just hand the reins over to anybody who can fix it. Authoritarianism, start to swing over to past a positive reaction to an overreaction. We an excess of compassion and trying to deal with it. Everyone's like, well, why are we helping other countries when we don't, just completely forgetting what happened a generation ago. And then the pendulum swings back. But again, to say the arc is towards improvement. Well, we are in a far better state than we were 50 years ago, than we were 100 years ago, than we were, so on and so forth. So I just think we're going to get the Great Depressions, but if you asked me before the Great Depression, you're like, how do we get ourselves out of this? Well, it's going to take a lot of work from a lot of different people. And, FDR, thank God that he was not successfully assassinated, because it was this close. And we got out of the Great Depression. Well, how are we going to deal with fascism in Germany? Well, ended up taking a world war, but we got out of it and we're better for it. In fact, so much better for it that we ended up not making the same mistakes that we had done with Germany after World War I. And with Japan, we were much better with Japan. And they're now one of our best allies. And so we're sitting here, we're learning, we're growing, and we are capable of carrying some of the knowledge of our past failures forward. And it's enough that the trend is towards improvement. But that doesn't mean periods like this stop happening. It doesn't mean we end up taking steps back towards authoritarianism. One of my favorite examples actually is the Civil War in the US. which, you know, it really wouldn't have taken a whole heck of a lot, I think, to reason our way through that. We were one of the only civilized countries left that still had slavery. There were ways the North could help the South transition out. You know, there were things we could do. But each side said this war is going to be easy. The other side can't compete with us. The North happened to be correct. Every history of this has said that there was no way the North was not going to win. They had all the industry, they were going to win. But it wasn't going to be easy. They thought it would be over in months. The South thought they'd win and it would be over in months. And instead, they fight this huge long war. By the time it's done, they're like, what the hell did we fight this for? And huge suffering, loss of life, and everybody's like, for what? We're back to one country. The slaves are freed, which in the end, some people to this day still disagree with, but not many. We're until Trump a reasonably unified country. So I think we're going to suffer. I think by the time we're done, we're going to sit back and we're going to say, that was really stupid. Why'd we do that? Well, because we're messy. We're human beings. We do stupid things. And then we try not to do it again. We'll do it again, but we'll find a new way to do it. And hopefully next time it won't be as bad. And we'll just keep struggling, and the net will be a net positive. That's the closest. I don't know if that's an answer to your question. That's a dodging answer. The answer is I have no clue.
Why is it worth it? Freedom, democracy, these ideas. And when I say those words, what images do they conjure in your mind?
It's worth it because the alternative was put forward by Hobbes. The natural state of man life is nasty, cold, brutish, and short. We've lived that for a very long time. And lonesome, thank you. It starts with the lonesome, in fact, so thank you. Take a look at animals, other animals, other than a lobster, who I have no idea why the lobster gets to outlive us. Why does a lobster get to live like 1,000 years
tortoises.
old? Yeah, dude, what did they do? It's like we put
a
man on the moon and we only get like 70 to 80 years. What the hell kind of bullshit is that? But the reason I don't have to fight other people for food, the reason we don't have to get into knife fights, the reason I don't have to worry about somebody coming up and stabbing me in the back, and it can happen. Every time I say an argument like this, people are like, well, it can happen. It does happen. Do you know what percentage of murder there is in this country today, as opposed to, again, any time in the Hobbesian world, say 500 years ago? Take a look at the Dark Ages. Why you want to know why they called it the Dark Ages? That's the alternative. And authoritarians, the entire idea behind authoritarian is that power comes from the individual, and whoever can kill the most, dominate the most, bend the most to his will is the rightful leader. This is actually a very Hobbesian view. It's not quite the Hobbesian social contract. It's not the Leviathan, but it's a Hobbesian view. It's I'm the strongest, therefore you're gonna do as I say, or I'm gonna kill you. I don't want to be in that world. And not only that, but I'm smart enough to realize that the people in that world value that physical strength, because that is what you need to survive. But what you need to thrive, to cure diseases, to cure Ebola, to put a man on the moon, are people who are like Stephen Hawking. They're in a wheelchair. Where would he be in that world? My kids have a better future because the people before me cared about freedom and cared about democracy and cared about republics. They didn't want the Hobbesian state of nature, which is all a dictatorship is in one way or another. It's an homage to that. I want my kids to do even better, and I want the future generations to do better, and I have the power to do it. So that's why I care.
My last question, and you are allowed to swear, and I usually get a variety of answers to this one, some of which are quite considered and philosophical, and some of which are short and sharp. Speaking directly to them, do you have a message for the authoritarians the want-to-be authoritarians of the world and those who support them?
No. No, I don't. I'll tell you why I don't. I don't because they wouldn't listen. They already don't respect. They only respect power. The first thought that crossed my mind was to say, "Hey guys, take a look at where you are because it's not going to end well for you. It doesn't end well for anyone in those positions. It just doesn't." That's not true. Sometimes it ends well, but it's the mafioso thing too. I mean, if you're in the mafia, your life expectancy is pretty short. There are some people who died wealthy and powerful, but it's rare. It's much more likely to happen in a democracy, but they're not going to listen to that, and that's not going to affect them. So I think no, I don't think I'd have a message. There's nothing I could say I think that they would hear. Just put my voice in with everyone else on No Kings, and hopefully let them reach the conclusion themselves that this isn't a place they really want to be. It looks attractive, but it's not a place they want to be. But they're not going to hear it from me. So
Sort of the sword of Damocles. It always eventually falls. That sword always falls, and the difference is that I've been able to identify is that when the sword falls and you're the leader of a democracy, the injury is you write your book in your garden office and you go on the speaking tour. And in a dictatorship, you're put up against the wall and shot.
Let me rephrase that, though. It doesn't always fall. If it did always fall, then people would know not to be dictators. It falls often enough that people should, but it's like people buy the lottery ticket, right? They're like, they know in their hearts, I'm going to be the exception. I'm going to be the one. If you take a look at the number of Russians who thought that it wasn't going to fall for them, most of them were wrong. Not all of them. Not all of them. Putin's been right so far. Now Putin's lived probably a difficult and stressful life, but he hasn't been removed from power. The oligarchs haven't stabbed him in the back. He hasn't been, sort of Stalin-esque disappeared. He wanted to be in charge of Russia. He wanted to consolidate the Soviet back into the old Soviet Union. He hasn't succeeded in doing that, but he's gotten further than anyone thought he would. And if he dies on his bed of old age, saying, well, I did my best, I did a pretty good job, well, the sword didn't fall for him. But that's a minority. But everybody thinks that's going to be them. We're all the hero of our own story, and we're going to be the exception. And so everyone thinks, well, if X, Y, and Z, if you take a look back at the life of dictators, almost all of them end very unpleasantly. If it was all of them, we wouldn't have any more dictators.
I think, yeah, as you say, it's enough that the lesson should be learned.
Yeah.
Mr. Soutter, thank you very much for coming onto the program. Just as a reminder for the audience, where can people find your work?
Nick's, you can find me at youtube.com/intimeshow. I also have a website. I haven't maintained it very much, but I have essays, stuff like that. That's Nick. I think that's still nicksoutter.com. But go to the YouTube channel. You can join us on the Discord. I'm also available there, and I'll chat you up. And the In Time Discord is discord.intimeshow.com. And join us there, and you can catch up. We have channels for it's essentially a newsroom, and we go through, and we also workshop. You'll see it, somebody put something in, and we workshop, and that's part of how we solve the problem of what do we know or what do we not know. And there are people in there who've been in there for 6 years, so we go through the process. So yeah, come check us out, and I think you'll enjoy the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a delight. I always enjoy these topics, and it was a pleasure meeting you. Was it last week? I think it was last week. And
Yeah, last Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to do this. This was a lot of fun. So thank you, sir.
That's it for this episode of Why We Fight. What struck you most about their story? What did you agree or disagree with? Drop a comment and let us know. And if this conversation meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who cares about democracy as much as you do. To get early access and support independent journalism, join us on Patreon or Substack. Links are in the description. And if you want to connect with a global community of people who care about freedom and human rights, come hang out with us on Discord. Until next time, remember, democracy is non-negotiable.